To me, everything's holistic. I think sometimes in marketing we become so laser focused on one thing, you miss the bigger picture. And I think that sort of stepping back and seeing the whole approach is kind of what I try and get companies to do.
Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the CVO Live. It's Valentin Radu and I'm here with Andi Jarvis.
How are you doing?
Well, mate, and we've just met here at the e-commerce conference in Greece, in Athens. He had a fantastic presentation and I want to pick his head for you out there. So Andy, why don't we start by letting our audience know about a few things about you, how you've got into this digital marketing arena?
Geez, so I'm really old and I got into marketing 20 years ago, before MySpace. So I went to university, got a job in sales, which I hated, and then got a job in sport marketing, which is what I really wanted to do. And did 5 years doing sport marketing, went to work in education, travelled for a little bit, worked in the media for a little bit, in marketing jobs for the media, and then went into agencies. But it was when I got into agency that I really came alive, because what I realised then is I have a really short attention span.
Yeah.
So being in-house is great, but I get bored really quickly. So like you do one thing, you do another thing, you've tried everything a little bit, and then it's like, right, I'm bored now. Whereas in agency, it's like, right, I've got this client and this client and this client, and flip. It's like, this suits me down to the ground. So I loved it. And then after years of doing agency, I ended up starting my own consultancy, which is doing marketing strategy, mainly focused on manufacturers who want to sell direct to consumer.
Yeah. Perfect. So, Andy, why do you love marketing, or what's the thing that keeps you here?
I like the challenges in marketing. So there's a different challenge all the time comes around, whether it's, because while there are universal laws of marketing, or some universal laws, every company is context specific, right? So just because you've worked in one company of this size that did this thing with this product, you can't just then go and work for another company in the segment. So if you've done great things with Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can go and work with a startup energy drink. It's a fizzy drink in a can.
Yeah.
But your experience of taking the world's #1 drink is useless to that brand. So everything's so context specific that you have to really take what you know, think on your feet, find out what you have to keep the same, what you have to change. And I love the challenge of it all. So that's what keeps me interested.
Excellent. So now focusing a bit on the purpose of this podcast, which is around helping e-commerce and retailers and agencies help their clients to increase customer lifetime value. Why don't we focus a bit on the consumer psychology, consumer behavior, because you're also, and you've been humble and you haven't said that you're also teaching these things at university, right?
Yeah, so I teach at a university in Liverpool, and I do some work with a Finnish university with Vasa as well. So I love teaching. I don't want to do it full time because, like I said, I like the variety, but I love doing the teaching. So people are weird. They're unpredictable, they're irrational, they're strange. We do very, very strange things. But the only thing people don't realize about themselves is just how strange they are. Because that weirdness to you is just normal, because that's who you are. So as marketers, and this has got worse, so like I said, I'm old, right? When I got into marketing, it was direct mail, it was before MySpace even, it was, we didn't have all of this data. Yeah. And what we've got now is so much data. We've got ones and zeros and reports from Google and Meta and TikTok, right? And we've got great data scientists plotting all this stuff, telling us, right, X and Y and Z will happen because of A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't. And then you're like, well, this guy with a PhD in thing and this girl with a PhD in smart stuff have both created these amazing charts that show me what's going to happen. But it didn't. Why? Well, because customers are really annoying, right? They don't read your charts or your data. They don't look at it and go, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah,
brilliant. They don't look at your chart and go, fuck it, I need to buy my product today because that's when the chart created by the two PhDs said it was going to happen. They have other things going on in their life, right? The child went to hospital, they lost their job, their car broke down, or somebody came back to see them from Australia as a surprise. And do you know what? They don't stand there looking, going, I wonder what this brand means to my life. They're just hungry, so they want to buy something. So to go back to answer your question, right? There's a really, really simple way you can turbocharge your results. You can improve everything you do exponentially. And it's really simple and costs very little. And nobody's doing it either, so you will get miles ahead of all your competition. Do you know what it is? Talk to your customers. Like, genuinely speak to them. And I look down the camera to tell you that as well, right? But so I've just asked that question there, doing the Q&A at the end of the presentation. I asked the question, there's maybe 200 people in the room? Like, how many people in the last 6 months have actually spoken to a customer? Not read a report, spoken to a customer. Less than 10 hands went up. And most of those hands were from the other speakers who were all sat, oh, brilliant, there's a car alarm going off. Hopefully that's not picked up, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably talking in a room full of e-commerce practitioners, 5 or 6 of them have actually spoken to a customer in 6 months. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying, right? So everyone's looking at a report and going, ooh, this is what we think we should do based on what these numbers tell us. Go and talk to your customer. Why do you buy this product? It's because it's cheap.
Yeah.
You know, in your marketing material, very few companies say, we're cheap, we're cheap, we're cheap, we're cheap. Why? Because nobody wants to be cheap and it devalues the product, and lots of good reasons. But if you talk to your customers and you speak to 20 of them and 20 of them go like, buy it because you're cheaper than everybody else.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something in that. So I'm just amazed nobody does it. I love that no one does it as well, because it keeps me in business where I go, let's talk to some customers, and people are like, wow, that's a radical idea.
Radical, indeed. So, Andi, focusing a bit on the ongoing consumer behavior. So we have like the one-time purchasers, those customers, they bought once.
Yeah.
I'm always telling this, and I may sound like a broken record to you, but when someone is buying the product for the first time, they are not buying the product, they are buying the promise of a product.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So why don't we focus a bit on what would you do? What would you recommend to brands looking for installing the buying habits to customers that will come back and buy over and over again?
Okay. I always think, you see, people buying the promise, and I always think you could almost sell anything to anybody once, right? Because you can make a promise and you can say this product will do A, B, and C, or whatever. But if your product doesn't fulfill that promise, then you'll never get them to buy it again. And I don't always think it needs to exceed the promise either, right?
Yep.
And if you look on, and a good example of this is that if you look on TripAdvisor, some of the best rated hotels and accommodation places are often some of the cheaper ones, right? Why? Because they make a really simple promise. We'll give you a clean room in a handy location and at a good price, right? So all they have to do is give you a clean room in a good location, and the price has to be good. Yeah. So if it's noisy outside, well, you don't mind, because I paid €50 for this room for a night, right? And I knew it was right in the party district. That's why I booked it. So you're paying €50 a night. You get woken up 3 times during the night. There's no staff around, but it doesn't matter. You pay €700 a night, right? And the bedding isn't made properly, or maybe they miss one towel. I mean, these are like minor things, or like they don't top up the soap when you come in the next day.
Yeah.
You're absolutely furious because your expectation is here and they've missed it. So it's not necessarily about exceeding. Exceeding is great if you can, but sometimes it's about making a promise and hitting it. And that sells you the thing. But the ongoing is about building relationships, but building relationships on the customer's terms. I think too many brands are obsessed with thinking that the customer cares about them, and they don't. They care about what your product does for them, which is fulfilling a want mainly rather than a need for most people. Fulfills a part of their life that they need. But I think loyalty only goes as far as long as you keep delivering on the promise. Yeah. So if you keep delivering the thing they need at the price they're prepared to pay, they will stay loyal to you. But don't confuse. I think there's a couple of brands in the world that have what you'd call brand loyalty. And you can probably name them: Apple, Coca-Cola, and people like that, right? I think too many people get confused with lots of repeat purchases means loyalty. I don't think it does. I think lots of repeat purchases means you have a relationship with them and you keep fulfilling their need. You fuck that up at some point and they're gone. Apple can fuck up one product and you'll still come back. Your brand isn't Apple. You need to sort that out and you need to consistently deliver. So to me, it's about consistently delivering, being there and doing the things you say you're going to do for your customer.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, Andy, and it sounds like let's do this right now. What we are seeing in the market, though, is that many companies are being trapped into this acquisition mode, right? It's like, let's acquire more customers. And I want to ask you, why do you think this is happening? Why don't more companies focus on repeat buyers rather than one-time buyers?
I don't know is the honest answer. I think my gut feel is that, so let me tell you a story. In Britain, in like the 1500s, so in the Middle Ages, right?
Yep.
We used to catch lots of witches. Mm-hmm. They find witches all around the country. In every village in the country where they would find a witch, they would find them, they would try them, and they would drown them or they would burn them. Right?
Yeah.
Now, we don't find witches around anymore. Does that mean we don't have any witches, or does that mean, what's happened? Did we kill all the witches? We never had witches. What we had in the 1500s was witch finders. People were paid by the government to go and find witches. And we had witch finder generals whose job it was to report to the king about how many witches had been found and got rid of.
Amazing.
So when you have a witch finder and a witch finder general whose job it is to find witches, what do they have to do? They have to go and find witches.
Yeah.
Roll that forward into digital marketing, right? You have a performance marketing department. What do they have to do? They have to perform, because if they don't perform, they're out of a job. So they've got to constantly recruit new customers, new acquisition. They're the witch finder general. We need more customers. We need new customers. Okay. But you can find more customers, you can get more money from your existing customers, or you can launch new products. There's not many more ways to make more money, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got a whole department whose very being depends on finding more customers, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. And
Google make it lovely and then bring you down to Google headquarters if you spend enough money, and they give you the t-shirt and the book, and they run the Google partner events and they're like, you guys are great. Thank you. And Facebook do it, or Meta or whatever they're called these days. And they're like, you guys are great. Come and spend more money. And they take you on nice trips. And if you hit the thing, they send you a little thing to put on your wall, like you're an agency.
Yeah.
And it's great, right? And you got all these things pumping your tires, and you put it out in a press release. We're a Google partner agency with this, with that, with the other.
Top 3%.
Top 3% globally. We're brilliant, right? If you you make your average customer repeat purchases 8 purchases, and you make it 10, right? Who puts a plaque on the wall for that? Nobody. Who takes you down to Dublin to head office or flies you to an event in California? Nobody, right? You stand up in a board meeting and say, oh yeah, so the repeat purchase is extended from 8 to 10. Right, wonderful. How much did that cost? All right, look, next line on the agenda. And so we focus on.
Yeah.
We're looking for witches because we've got people whose job it is to find witches. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
And it's not to kick performance marketers are great at doing what they do. It's a fault of senior marketers, I think, for not having a more holistic view. Because you want performance marketers to find witches. That's what you employ them for. It's the CMO or the marketing director who needs to do a better job of saying, right, we need to look at this holistically, because you've already got the customer. You know who they are, you know why they buy, you know how often they buy, and you can make them buy again if you know what you do.
Yeah, so eventually it goes down to the overall strategy of the CMO, and also about the internal alignment around, hey, we have these customers, we need to make them very, very happy so that they come back, buy again, we're more profitable, we get our bonuses, and everyone is cheering up afterwards.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that, so companies are, from the outside, companies look amazing, right? Don't they? And you're like, oh, I'd love to work here, or that company, I want to consult with that company. When you get on the inside of any company I've ever worked with, they're always a mess. Every company's a mess. It's just some companies are better functioning messes than others. You know, they're restructuring, they're people down, somebody's not sure of their job. There's all this like tension going on in the organization, right? But from a tech point of view as well, they're always a mess and all over the place. So if you're in an old company, they'll almost always have a database of certain customers up to a certain point sits over here that this part of the company looks after. And then there's the newly recruited customers who come through performance marketing. But that database does talk to that one, but not properly. So we have to keep a separate thing here. And often there's real practice, and you go and you go, right, you need to do this with your existing customers. And they're like, yeah, so the guy who knew how to do that left, and now we don't really know how to do that. So and like really weird things like that happen in so many companies. Yeah. That actually it's like, if you could unify that and streamline it, you'd find amazing things. And I think that's why I hate the phrase soft skills. I call it people skills, right? Or core skills are really important in marketing skill sets, because being able to help the organization realign and move just a little bit quicker and better. Organizations are like tankers, right? They don't move quickly. They're not sports cars. But if you can just get that alignment moved, that's what we found when COVID happened, right? When COVID happened, you remember, you came into work one day, what's COVID? Everyone was sent home at lunchtime, and then you've got to work out how to work from home. So there's this. Yeah. But after that, companies went into survival mode. So all the other shit that you usually have you done your fire training drill? Do you know how, who's first aider for today? Have we done the meeting about so all that stopped. And companies were just like, how do we survive the next month? Yeah. That's not great long-term thinking, but what they did was everyone came together and went, this is what we focus on. So the ship turned really quickly. Everyone got it together, and companies rebuilt websites in a week. Things that would, a project that would usually take a year, they did in a week, and nothing broke, nothing went wrong. Delivery companies rebuilt whole processes. Software patches were pushed so that all this could keep going. Yep. In weeks, in days. Stuff that if you do it normally, they'd be like, it's a 2-year project, it's going to cost 10 million. Why did that do that? Because they stopped doing all the peripheral shit and it all turned. But as you come back to the office and as it all goes, all the peripheral shit comes back. So having those core skills, those people skills to be able to go, right, we know we don't want to go back to COVID and get on a war footing, so we're moving this direction. But now we're going all over the place. If we could just move it this way a little, we'd move quicker. And if you can move quicker and better and more effective than everyone else, can you launch a better product than everyone else? No. Well, you could, but there's a product development cycle. And are you selling other people's stuff? Okay, so you can't do that. But if you can just be that little 1%, 2% quicker, better, sharper than everybody else, customer at the heart of what you do than everybody else, you'll win. That's how you win.
Do you think it's a matter of optimizing the business rather than focusing on optimizing the customer journey? Do you think that's the root cause, let's say?
Yeah, I think it's both, right? I think in a sort of relatively senior marketing role, you've got to work up and you've got to work down. You've got to get the marketing, you've got to control what you can control, which is getting the marketing team to do the things you need them to do. Optimize the shit out of that customer journey, right? Make sure you're collecting the right data. Make sure you're talking to your customers. Make sure your repeat purchase messaging comes at the right time. You probably can't tell, I buy a protein supplement, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what size bag of protein I buy, 500 grams or 5 kilos, the email telling me I need to buy another one comes at exactly the same point, right? 2 weeks after I bought it, and you're like, hey, there's literally 2 months supply in this bag. Why are you telling me to buy again after 2 weeks? When I don't buy, they send me a discount code 3 days later. And you're like, who fucking designed this? It's madness, right? I've just bought enough protein to last me 2 months. Yeah. If I'm taking it every day, which I don't, but they've never asked that. So if I'm taking it every day, I've got 2 months supply. And they send me an email after 2 weeks. Madness, right? So control all of that stuff. But you do also need to, in your organization, whatever organization it is, how many times have we gone, we need to do this thing, and then someone's like, oh, we don't have dev resource. Okay, oh, we could do that, but our mailing house can't manage it. Oh, we can't do that because we can't ship that many things in it. Oh, you need to slow sales down because we can't fulfill all of that. Like that, I've had those conversations where the fulfillment part of the business are like going, you need to stop doing the thing you're doing because we can't fulfill enough orders. Throw more people at it, and we can't. The warehouse isn't big enough, or we don't have enough stations to do, or we don't have enough computers this was one of the things I heard. We haven't got enough computers and printers to be able to print the labels out fast enough for the packing slips. So like, yeah, but we've been given a target of this, and we can't hit that target unless you can put more stuff in a box and send it out the door. Like, well, we can't.
Yeah.
So then you have to go to the CEO and you're like, right, here's the problem. You said you want us to do this. And the CEO is like, can you do X, Y, and Z? No, not unless you build another building. That'll cost X amount. Right, don't worry. We'll move your target down. You go, but it was obviously important that the target needed to be this many million 6 months ago. We're running towards it really, really fast. We're going to achieve it. And now you just brought it down arbitrarily. Why? Because the organization. So in a senior marketing role, you need to control what you can control, but you need to be aware of these things as you start to work up as well.
Yeah, I love it, and there is so much to unpack here, Andy, and let's do this. First of all, brilliant example about the supplements. I'm always telling this, that unless you have the data to support your messaging, stop messaging altogether, because you are more ruining the relationships with your customers, because the consumption patterns must be aligned with your email remarketing, onboarding stuff. And love that example. And you can actually do this. It's this thing called chance to place the next order. You can monitor it. It's based on the quantity of the product that can be used afterwards.
It's dead simple stuff to do, right? And you're like, why aren't you doing? I could understand, like, so if I buy 2 months of protein and after 6 weeks they send me an email, do you want to reorder? Now, I don't take it every day. If they asked me, I would tell them how frequently I take it, but they haven't. Yeah. But I would understand if after 6 weeks they're like, hey, you bought a big bag 6 weeks ago. Do you want to reorder so you don't run out? Like, no, I've still got another month left, I reckon, because I don't take it every day. Yeah. But at least I'd understand why that email came then. And if they asked me, you know, be like, do you use it every day? Are you nearly? I'd tell them. Yeah. Because then they wouldn't need to give me a discount code, but they give me a discount code, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to reorder now, even though I don't need it, because I've got a discount code that expires at the end of the week. So all they're doing is killing their margin. Yeah. For something I was going to reorder anyway, if they'd have just got the timing of that right. So now I've got enough protein to, like, you know, like if there's you know, if the planet goes into lockdown or there's some sort of nuclear apocalypse, right? I got enough protein to last me throughout that nuclear apocalypse, because I just keep using it. I'm like, right. But they're, you know, in there going, oh, look, we sent a voucher code. And their metrics, voucher code, bing, sale, great, let's do more voucher codes. No. Killing margin is what you're doing. Yeah. Bonkers business. Yeah. And regarding the other part of the thing that I wanted to unpack is regarding the CEO's job. Do you think customer lifetime value is the CEO's KPI, or should be on marketing or in other department? Where do you see it? So I'm going to try and answer specifically, right? I think everyone is in marketing. I have a presentation that I don't do it at conferences like this. It's a paid for keynote that I give to businesses, right? Mm-hmm. It's called Everyone is in Marketing. And I talk about why it has to be everybody's job. You're in sales, you're in marketing. You're in distribution, you're in marketing. You're at reception, you're in marketing. You're the CEO, you're in marketing. Everybody's in marketing. So should the CEO own a marketing target? Yeah, I think they should. But I think the reality is that if you look at organizational structures, right, what you really want is the person who is best placed to answer the question to be involved in that target. Mm. So, and that involves delegation. We're into sort of operational, organizational stuff, but like the CEO should care about customer lifetime value, but it should be, I don't think the board should KPI the CEO on that. I think the CEO should KPI the chief marketing officer for that and say, right, this is your metric, but absolutely every time we talk, I want you to tell me about it. Mm-hmm. I want you to, every time we see you, if I go, hi Valentin, and be like, first thing I want to come out of your mouth is, right, customer lifetime value is this. Repeat transaction. You know, don't say how you doing, how's the wife, how's the kids. Give me a lifetime value first. Yeah. And then we'll talk about families. I think that, you know, that's how it should be. Should be empowered to seem to say, right, I want you to move this needle. Mm-hmm. Go and do it. Got it. So what I want to tackle is in a healthy organization where everyone has their KPIs aligned from top to bottom. Yeah. I think that would certainly work. But in order to let's say delegate it properly, you should be aligning the fact that, I don't know, the CMO's job would be to bring more people, make more people buy, but what if they don't have the supply, and then you go into these supply things, or you go into the customer service things where you are not responding to the tickets, to the pissed off customers. So I guess
alignment should be there in order to allocate the lifetime value to a certain department, which mostly is marketing, of course.
Yeah, alignment's crucial, right? But if you look at I love talking to people who've worked for Procter & Gamble, one of the great marketing organizations, right?
Yeah.
I worked with a major US company, their British subsidiary. And the chief executive of that business wasn't the chief executive. He was actually the chief finance officer.
Yeah.
He just ran the business in the UK. So he ran the whole UK subsidiary. His background was chief finance officer. But he had come from Procter & Gamble. Probably in the top 5 marketers I've ever worked with. And his job was chief finance officer. He wasn't a marketer. He had no marketing degree. He had no formal marketing qualifications. One of the top 5 marketers I've ever worked with. Why? Because at Procter & Gamble, every brand has a squad that runs it, right? So Pantene in Romania will have a managing director, a marketer, a finance and operations, he'll have one of everything, but they'll have a country manager who runs that team, but they all sit together, and they'll have the same in Hungary, they'll have the same, and maybe sometimes they group them, so it might be like Balkans or like Western Europe or France, but in bigger countries like in France, they'll have a country manager, right?
Yeah.
So every one of those people, marketers, have to, because they're all on the hook. There's the person who runs it, but then there's this team, and they're all on the hook together. If sales don't work, it's not your fault, your fault, your fault. It's all of your fault together.
Yeah.
So that finance officer has to understand marketing. The marketer has to understand finance. They both have to understand logistics. And sales are like the people who make sure it's on the shelves and stuff like that, and product merchandisers. Yeah. And they all have to understand each other's worlds, because all your worlds are dependent on, we've got this TV ad going out today. Production are like, we can't produce any more because, you're spending millions on an advertising campaign. But we don't have enough stuff to get on the shelves. So the sales team are like, we can't do that because it's Christmas and we lose shelf space at Christmas. What have you done? So this guy, I know, Ricky, was like the greatest, one of the top 5 greatest marketers I've ever worked with, and he was a finance guy. Yeah. So if you can take, and people go, of course it works for Procter & Gamble. It doesn't work because it's Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble works because they take this approach. Yeah. So, marketers need to learn to work. That's why we're back to core skills. It shouldn't be, sales are doing this or operations are doing this. Or, you should all be sat in that room together saying, okay, here's my marketing plan. We need to run, because demand works. We're a seasonal product and we sell a lot coming up to Christmas. So Black Friday, we're going to do 60% of sales between October and Christmas. What do you need to be able to scale up to be able to deliver that? Yeah. Okay. How do we get sales team? What are you going to get? Right. What do we all need to be able to achieve that? Great. Right. We're all on the same page. And it sounds a bit utopian, but if you're not doing that, you're just wasting time and wasting money. So I think, and that's where to come back to lifetime value of customers, right? It's easy sometimes to predict. We can spend X on Google or Y on Facebook and we'll get Z results. So you can plan what resources you need in operations and in production and here, there. Bit harder to do that sometimes. You're like, can we get these people to spend an extra 1 or buy more frequently or increase their purchase cycle from this to that? All those things. It can be a bit hard to predict. You're testing. But if you're working with these people along the way, you can start to improve that. So to me, everything's holistic. I think sometimes in marketing we become so laser focused on one thing, you miss the bigger picture. And I think that sort of stepping back and seeing the whole approach is kind of what I try and get companies to do.
Love it. Yeah. Andy, my last question for you today is, what would you recommend to an e-commerce driven practitioner that wants to level up his game around understanding consumer behavior? It can be a book, a course, whatever.
So I would read, there's a book by a guy called Rory Sutherland called Alchemy. So there's some great books on buyer behavior and things like that, and like Thinking Fast and Slow, Predictably Irrational, stuff like that. I like those books. But what Rory Sutherland works for Ogilvy Advertising, he's the chairman of Ogilvy UK. So he uses a lot of really mainly big brands like Red Bulls and Mars and people like that. But it's a very marketing-driven book. It's not just about how the brain works, it's how the brain works in marketing and advertising and sales.
Yeah.
So he gives a lot of great examples in that, and it's a real kind of fun field guide. Rory also has a course that comes off the back of it, and it's a really interesting book. Rory Sutherland, Alchemy, I think is a good one. But I think mainly, and just like roll your sleeves up with this stuff and test it. So if you're talking about social proofing or using authority or reciprocation and things like that, test it, right? Find a small group, test it. Does it work? Great. Scale it a bit further. Does it not work? Don't worry about it. Test something else. That approach to it, I think, is equally as valid as reading any book. Just test, and see what happens.
Yeah, love it. Andy, where can people find you if they want?
So I'm Andi with an I. Does it come up on screen? Yeah, Andi with an I, not a Y. But if you look for Andi Jarvis on Twitter and LinkedIn, that's where you find me mainly. I generally talk marketing and witter about marketing. And a lot of conferences, and definitely if you've got a conference, get Valentin. Brilliant. Okay.
Super. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thank you. Cheers. Really enjoyed it.
And for you out there, we'll see each other in the next episode.